There's a scene in the latest episode of The Last of Us where Ellie and Dina are hiding from a group of soldiers. We overhear their leader give the order to eliminate whoever's responsible for the scene they just walked in on. He qualifies it by saying, "I don't care if it's a woman, a kid, or a baby." And these are the first people that our main duo encountered since arriving in Seattle. The first alive people, since there was that group of dead refugees outside of town, the one with women, kids, and likely babies. Those nice folks belong to a group capable of some pretty heinous acts themselves, the display of which prompts Dina to express what we're all thinking. What is actually wrong with Seattle? This ain't Jackson. Survival here is characterized by extreme conflict, no shortage of brutality, and a ton of difficult choices. An introduction to Isaac precedes our introduction to the city. He's the current leader of the Washington Liberation Front, which is also known as the WLF or the Wolves. Disillusioned from his time at Fedra, he makes a dramatic choice to wipe out the transport full of dicks who were under his command. Their disdain for the citizens they're tasked with keeping in line reminds us of how Fedra soldiers tend to get a little drunk off the power their posts afford them, and shows that these guys are all too far gone. After Isaac explains that they call regular people voters because they took away their right to do that and started using the name to mock them, he dispatches his unit with a couple of grenades and offers the one new guy who hasn't been corrupted yet a choice. It's the same one the mysterious new character Herron offered him, to join the WLF to fight against Fedra. But how it's offered is quite different. In the new guy's case, it's not really a choice, or more specifically, it's a choice that's already been made for him. Because what's the alternative? This is similar to what's going on with Ellie and Dina. We understand why Ellie wants justice, and how after the council and Jackson decided not to act on her behalf, it wasn't really a choice to come after Abby. Still, going to a major city you don't know anything about is crazy. And it doesn't take long before it becomes apparent they're in over their heads. This is further complicated by Dina's pregnancy, which when she sees something off screen in the pharmacy and then says she's going to pee, the puking we saw in the last episode starts to make sense. Considering the crazy situation later when she drops this information, the opening sequence is a good way to reveal this. It's a surprise to Ellie when she hears it later, but we've already had time to put it together. Seattle Day One really drives home the harsh realities of this place and leaves you asking, what the fuck is wrong with Seattle? It's almost like you need to find something human between the characters to balance things out, and after the flashback to Isaac's time with Fedra back in 2018, that's where the episode gets started. One of the things that seemed immediately weird when I was playing the game was that everything was deserted in all the early Seattle chapters. This won't make sense until later, but it provides space for Ellie and Dina to pass on information, all with this eerie feeling that something bad was about to happen. While the show moves much faster, it uses this time to do the same thing, and by the time Ellie finds the guitar in the Valiant music store, they've already fallen pretty far on the road to being in love. The potential optimists' rainbows and Ellie's sweet rendition of Take On Me by a-ha do a lot of the heavy lifting, but there are still some hurdles since, as a child, Dina's choice about who she could love was made for her. While I'm probably not the target demographic for coming-of-age love stories, and kind of rolled my eyes a bit when I got to this part of the game, it's effective character development that does what it's supposed to do, and I do like the sentiment of searching this destroyed place through all these damaged instruments to find something that by all rights shouldn't exist in this world. Of course, this is the calm before the storm. Their time in Emerald City won't just be about eating beef jerky, serenades, and goo-goo eyes. After dark, when they head to the TV station they spotted earlier, the horrors of the city take center stage. Before we get to that, we get a better idea of why things are the way they are. Our first introduction to the Scars, or Seraphites as they like to call themselves, showed a peaceful faction fleeing the city. When we first met Isaac, he was rebelling against a totalitarian regime that had been stripping away individual freedoms to maintain order, and using brutal tactics and executions to hold on to power. We hear noble ideas from both sides, but there are also extremist threads. The cult tendencies and religious devotion of the Seraphites, and Isaac's creative application of grenades. When we watch him torturing a Seraphite prisoner, there are plenty of important details to parse. For one, Jeffrey Wright does such a good job with the character, relaying the story about how he wasn't good at talking to women, so he focused on cooking, that you might overlook the fact that he's a guy who enjoys the torturing part of this. His line, "If you own Moviel, you use Moviel," makes me think he's done this a lot. And while he feels justified because both sides seem to be losing a lot of lives in their war, when you're the leader, you don't have to spend your days trying to beat information out of POWs unless you like to. On the other side, when he's accused of shooting a kid in the head, the Scar doesn't deny it. He just points out that the wolves do the same. He's a true believer who feels confident he's on the right side of things. In the flashback, it sounded like the Seraphites were first forming at that time because in the Dick story, the citizen he detained was handing out religious pamphlets. 11 years is a long time for something like that to take hold, and the big takeaway from the scene as you watch them go around in circles is that neither side looks poised to back down. There's a mention of a truce that didn't hold, and both sides seem convinced that they'll eventually come out on top. Isaac believes the wolves will triumph because of their military might, while the Seraphites have their faith and a belief that theirs is the more just cause, because individual wolves defect and join them every day while none of the Scars ever leave. And when Isaac realizes his threat to burn his entire body won't produce results, as his prisoner just holds up his hand like he's ready, he just shoots him. While this is going on, you see two guards posted outside. The one seems like a newish recruit who's horrified at the screams. The one off screen tells him to shut up because Isaac knows what he's doing. This makes him sound like a true believer, and we eventually see that he's the guy who was spared in the flashback and given the choice to join the WLF. Before they enter the TV station building, following a route through a broken window made by Scars not long before they got there, Dina asks Ellie what they'll do if they run into wolves that weren't in Jackson. Ellie doesn't say anything, but her look says we kill them all, right? And Dina agrees. They don't find anyone from Abby's group inside, or any survivors at first, or anyone that's not riddled with arrows or strung up by the neck and disemboweled. It's a gruesome scene, and from the symbol that's painted in blood on the wall with the words "Feel Her Love," Ellie figures out that the group that did this is connected to the dead Scars they passed on the way into the city. WLF backup shows up before they can get out of the building, and Ellie gets to jump on one of the soldiers and uses her grappling training to take him down. Dina gets there just in time to kill a second guard who was on his way to back up his buddy, and then Ellie does her signature stealth kill move from the game, stabbing him in the neck with her knife. Once they get out of there, they're stuck at a dead end, but find a small opening that they can fit through that the soldiers can't. They can't follow them, and they end up in the transit tunnels. But since the WLF is familiar with their city, they circle around to enter the subway station through a different entrance. The soldiers expected it to be empty, but when they started using flares to light the tunnel, one landed on some tendrils. It isn't long before you start hearing infected. Dina does the counting thing she did in the Season 2 premiere, where she sits quietly and listens to see how many infected they're dealing with. The first time we saw this, it showed that Ellie was the more impulsive of the two. This time, it underlines how much heavier this situation is compared to what they're used to seeing on patrol. It's also a nod to the gameplay mechanic called Listen Mode. When creeping around areas with infected or other threats, you can stay still and listen to see where your enemies are located around corners and even through walls. Once she runs out of fingers, they realize a horde is coming, and when it crashes onto the scene, it takes care of the soldiers. Ellie and Dina make it inside a line of subway cars that's just getting swarmed by infected trying to get to them. It's harrowing, and there are some close calls before Dina can climb up on the roof and pull Ellie up so that they can run for safety. They make it over a fence that slows the swarm down, but run into one of those full-height turnstiles that takes a tremendous effort to get through for Ellie. Dina can't follow her fast enough, and a runner who made it under the fence closes in. Ellie decides to push her arm out in front of her, so she'll be the one to get bitten. It's a heroic gesture and saves her life, but Dina still doesn't know Ellie is immune, so she thinks she just watched this person she wants to be with sacrifice herself. When they make it into a theater across the street, Dina gets ready to put her down. That's what they do when someone gets bitten. And even though it's difficult, and especially hard in this case, it's the right move. Her saying, "Don't make this any harder than it has to be," says everything. And her tears make you think about how she teared up at the music store and how the whole world she started imagining is disappearing after lasting less than an afternoon. As obvious as it is to us that Dina will not go through with it, it's a pretty tall order for Ellie to explain what's happening. She says, "I would die for you, I would, but that's not what just happened." And we can't say how many times Dina has had to do this, but know that it's what's expected, and that most people wouldn't go quietly even when they know that. The survival instinct has to kick in. So there's really no reason for her to believe Ellie. She would have heard stories of people doing the exact same thing if she hadn't experienced it herself. So there's no reason except that she doesn't want to believe this is the end. That turns out to be enough when Ellie offers her a way forward. She says she'll go to sleep in a chair, Dina can watch from a safe distance, and kill her at the first sign she's turning. Of course, she doesn't turn, and from there can eventually convince Dina she's immune. Now that her secret that she could only ever share with Joel is exposed, Dina shares hers, telling Ellie she's pregnant before kissing her, and then they go at it in a way that says it's what they've both been thinking about for a long time. The next morning, after Dina insists they fix their morning breath by chewing on some beef jerky, she explains why it's happening now. The idea of losing her brought everything into focus, and she tells her about the future she thought they might spend together raising a kid. Ellie doesn't even have to think about it, she wants this. All of this morning after stuff is quite good and feels like one of those moments where the post-apocalyptic reality is miles away. Both actors do a great job of selling this as something real, and you can see how it's changing them as it's happening. The Ellie we see here is not the one from the season premiere, nor the one waking up in the hospital in the last episode. She shows Dina her burn and explains that she really just wanted to wear short sleeves again. And Dina tells her the story about her mom not accepting the idea that she liked girls, which I already mentioned. She also says that she tried to make it work with Jesse because she believes he's a good guy. There are a lot of changes in how the story develops in the game. I won't go into all of them, but the one I'd been wondering about was that their first romantic encounter happened before Joel died. I wasn't sure why they held that off, and seeing how this plays in the episode makes sense. In the game, they were just into each other, and it happened naturally while they were hiding out from the storm. Having it happen here, with all the cards on the table, gives it more weight. Dina says, "I'm pregnant and I want to be with you," rather than the pregnancy just coming up after the fact. They both get to make a choice here, plus, this is the first episode of the rest of their lives in a way. Joel was already gone in the last episode, but they were mourning and still in Jackson. And it's not to say that Dina replaces him in Ellie's life, but she does become something new for her to lose, something to hold on to. We see that play out when they hear the wolves talking on the radio and find out where Nora is. Remember, Nora was one of the people who was there when Joel died. And if they can get to her, then they can get to Abby. When they go up onto the roof and they see the fighting in the city, Ellie reacts like Joel. She wants to protect Dina and hold on to the potential of a future together. She confirmed this earlier when she realized she was going to be a dad. You could see how happy that idea made her. This connects back to Dina saying Joel taught her well. She was talking about playing the guitar, but the look on Ellie's face said it went beyond that. This is something real to fight for, but also something she can't imagine losing. It's interesting to see how the shoe is on the other foot, because the impulse to protect is never wrong. It's natural. I don't have kids, so I can't claim to understand how deep that goes, but I've been someone's child and know that sometimes you just want your parents to say, "I'm here if you need me, but you can do this," and then just go away and let you make your own decisions. It isn't even that complicated for two adults in a relationship. Ellie is worried about her partner and says so, asking her to think about it before she goes after Abby, what it would mean, and if the risk is really worth it. I really like that if they were going to cross this bridge, the writers went all the way with it. Dina hears what she says, thinks about it, and grabs her hand, says together, and that's it. None of what they saw made her think that Ellie would be better off out there doing it by herself or that she couldn't help. She made her choice. In my last video, I discussed how the rules change when things are all about survival, and how when they left Jackson, the story shifted its focus from making a future back to survival mode. Bringing a relationship and an unborn child into the equation shifts things again. It introduces the cycle of life into a story about the cycle of violence. It seems like the WLF and the Seraphites will keep the cycle of violence going either way, so I'm curious to see how the new developments affect Ellie's decisions, and if her experience with Joel and how that made her feel once she got older will help her be a better partner, or if she'll just do the same things. When you contrast it with the brutality on display in Seattle, their deep personal connection opens the door to introducing so much more to the story, and it gives us a new us. And I think that's a great place to leave things. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.